What? Oh, no, I'm not a bum in New Orleans. Although, when I went to New Orleans last time, I did actually step on a guy who was sleeping in some bushes. No, I'm not a homeless man. It's just me, Justin, here in New Orleans Square at Disneyland. That's right, we're back.
Here you leave today and enter the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy.
Ah, the wonderful and magical rivers of America. Now, in this area represents a Mississippi River wharf. What's the significance of the Mississippi River? Well, Walt Disney grew up in Missouri, in a little town called Marceline, which is not far down a little highway from a town called Hannibal, Missouri. And of course, growing up, he was enthralled by the works of one Mark Twain. Stories about the Mississippi River in books like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. Of course, Mark Twain himself, whose real name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens, was born and raised in Hannibal, Missouri, not far from where Walt Disney grew up. Now, back in the late 1850s, when Mark Twain was actually piloting steamboats on the Mississippi River, that was kind of like being a rock star airplane pilot and a NASA astronaut all rolled into one. You were the bee's knees if you were piloting one of those things up and down the Mississippi River. You had to learn the river from memory up and down. The river was constantly changing its shape. There were snags, there were sandbars that you couldn't see. You had to learn to read the surface of the water, and Mark Twain was able to do that as a young Sam Clemens and memorize the entire river. He wrote about all that in a book called Life on the Mississippi. I recommend it. I think you should check it out. It carves out a little slice of American history and not many people are that familiar with. Of course, the other classic tribute to Mark Twain is the appropriately named Mark Twain Steamboat here at Disneyland. It's been here since opening day, 1955. There's the pilot house right there. Imagineers. I put another little tribute here to Mark Twain that almost everybody misses. And I want to show that to you right now. Now, right down here past Lafitte's Anchor, which we'll talk about later, is a little river notices sign. Here it is. Now, of course, Disneyland is great at theming, so since this is the load area to Tom Sawyers Island, we fittingly put the fictional St. Petersburg Journal, that was the town from Tom Sawyer, with a recounting of the story here, and then there's some historical, actual advertisements from things you would have seen back in the 1840s, 1850s era, steamboat advertisements going up and down the river. But there's one little detail here, a tribute to Mark Twain, I'd like to point out to you. Somebody went through the trouble of obtaining an actual copy and making an actual copy of Mark Twain's River Pilot's certificate, his actual license from when he became a licensed pilot. Samuel Clemens. That just goes to show you what a big job being a riverboat pilot was back in that day. And you were actually licensed by the United States government, even way back then. Being something of a Twainiac myself, I love this little detail. And there's something else I actually want to point out, is that Mark Twain didn't receive his actual pilot's license and become a full-fledged pilot instead of an apprentice or co-pilot until April in 1859. Now, for those of you who are into history, you know, of course, that the Civil War started in 1861. So it was only about a year and a half that Mark Twain was actually a Mississippi Riverboat full-fledged pilot, earning a full pilot salary before the river was actually closed by the war. The United States government was actually drafting Mississippi Riverboat pilots as part of their blockade and for their warships that would go up and down the river to combat the South. And so Mark Twain, wanting no part of that and wanting to have nothing to do with the war, basically absconded to Nevada for the duration. But it's a good thing he did, because that's where he became a regular newspaper reporter and turned to writing as his full-on career. We wouldn't have all those Mark Twain stories that we know and love if the Civil War hadn't come along and shut the river. In fact, many years later, as an old man, Mark Twain would lament the fact that the Civil War happened and say that if the war hadn't happened, he would have stayed at the helm of his ship and died a happy riverboat captain as an old man. So there you have it, just another little Disneyland detail that I wanted to throw your way. Right about now, I gotta go catch a boat, so I'll see you later.